Victoria's heart belonged entirely to her husband and her boy, Hudson. She adored them to bits and did her utmost to bring joy into their lives. While her husband returned her affection, their son grew into a pampered and unruly child. But they turned a blind eye to his antics, brushing it off as mere childish mischief. Out of the blue, a sudden illness ambushed her husband, and he swiftly succumbed, leaving Victoria alone in her sorrow and Hudson fatherless. To pick up the pieces of her tattered world and stabilize their shaky circumstances, Victoria took on 2 extra jobs. Thus the days rolled on. Victoria devoted herself ceaselessly to her duties. By day she served at her job, and by evening she was at her abode, tirelessly sprucing up and preparing meals for her sole offspring. Yet she remained vigilant about her son's well-being, ensuring he lacked nothing and wasn't pushing himself too hard. "There's plenty of time for him to toil," she would retort to her companions, who suggested that Hudson might tidy his own space, dispose of the garbage, launder his hosiery, or heat his own supper. Why rob a child of his innocence so prematurely when life itself is harsh enough? Hudson, on his part, grew increasingly bold and indolent with each passing year. His school was perpetually sending complaints of his poor conduct and reluctance to engage academically. Victoria absorbed these criticisms without a word, yet upon returning home, she heard out her son's claims of being misunderstood and unfairly targeted. They got nothing better to do than to hassle an orphan. She whispered quietly to herself, if only they'd ease off a bit, he might show more interest in his studies. I've raised him right, provided for his every need, he stands equal to anyone, yet I'm still lacking food. Regrettably, Hudson failed to secure a budget spot at the university. It's merely scraps here, everyone grabbing the last bit to line their own pockets, whispered Victoria, as she handed over the hefty tuition fees at the university's payment desk. However, Hudson's tenure at the university was short-lived. He was spectacularly dismissed. "Hudson, I've spoken with Lincoln. He's agreed to take you on in his crew," Victoria gleefully announced to her son. "Mom, have you lost your mind? Me working on a construction site? At least make me a foreman, not just some regular laborer. What do you take me for?" Outraged by the idea, Hudson chose instead to join his buddies at the tavern. Recently, he had started drinking excessively, staggering home intoxicated more frequently than not. "Look here, Victoria, you really ought to get a grip on your son," Lincoln cautioned her. "If you don't, you'll end up drinking away your apartment too." "Oh, Lincoln, please." Victoria dismissed the concern with a flustered wave. "The lad's just going through a rough patch. It'll clear up soon enough and all will be well." Lincoln sadly shook his head, compassionately observing the woman who saw her son in a positive light. Hudson was gradually spending more time outside the house, and objects began to mysteriously vanish. However, Victoria refused to acknowledge her son's involvement in their disappearance. He persuaded his mother that a notorious gang of burglars had targeted their apartment. Surprisingly, Victoria believed him. As time passed, their friends and neighbors, who initially sympathized with her, gradually distanced themselves. Only Lincoln made occasional visits, expressing his disapproval as he fixed the furniture damaged by Hudson and the faucet in the bathroom, which was barely holding on. Unfortunately, there was no money for a replacement, as it was all spent on alcohol. "Victoria, please let him go. Come live with me," Lincoln pleaded with her. He was lonely, having lost his wife long ago, and his sons had moved on with their own lives. "I'm uncertain whether I should part ways with him," pondered the woman. "How will he manage without me? He wouldn't even bother to warm up a meal for himself." In reality, Victoria truly desired to move in with Lincoln. She had taken a liking to him, and his assistance would be more than sporadic, but constant. She even contemplated discussing it with her son at one point. However, he yelled at her so vehemently that her yearning swiftly dissipating. "Are you out of your mind? What about your late father? Have you completely disregarded him? What will he think up above in heaven? That you're not faithful to him, that you dishonor his memory by cohabiting with another man." In essence, Hudson was afraid of just one thing: the potential influence Lincoln might have over his mother, causing her to neglect him. Lincoln himself understood this, but was clueless as to how to resolve the issue. An unexpected solution presented itself when Lincoln's youngest son, Thomas, made the decision to leave his job and return to their hometown to settle down and start a family. After conversing with his son and discussing their predicament, Lincoln and Thomas devised a plan. "Get ready, Victoria, you'll move in with me," Lincoln announced with a wide grin, stepping into the abode of his beloved lady while clutching various items in his distressed state. Hudson received the news with composure. Victoria initially smiled and asked, What about Hudson Lincoln? Lincoln proudly displayed his approval by showing his thumb and declared, "I have a son, Thomas. He's that kind of guy." Winking at Hudson, he continued, "They'll live with Hudson and we'll have our privacy. They won't be bothered. Being young, they'll figure out what's best for them." Hudson's spirits lifted at the thought that his mother, who constantly fretted over him, wouldn't be present. Moreover, he would have a drinking companion and potentially a supplier of alcohol. Hudson readily agreed. The meeting was commemorated modestly, free from any alcoholic indulgence. When Hudson brought up drinking again, Thomas subtly winked and said, "Just wait, my friend. It's time for some serious business." Enthusiastically, Hudson did not press the matter further. Upon entering the apartment, Hudson eagerly rubbed his hands together and turned to Thomas, his neighbor, with a proposal. "Well, my friend, let's kick off your housewarming party, shall we?" However, Thomas's face bore no trace of a smile. "Get this," he retorted, devoid of any warmth. "You take a tumble, you do push-ups." Stunned, Hudson exclaimed, "What on earth do you mean?" To his surprise, Thomas spat out, exactly as it sounds, "Screw you," and promptly dropped to the floor. Alarmed, Hudson protested, "Hey, what the hell do you think you're doing? I'll call the police this instant." Dismissing his threat, Thomas retorted, "Yeah, go ahead. I'll claim you were wasted and fell all by yourself. Tell me, who you think they would believe? You or me? I've got a job, what about you? So don't even think about defying me. Starting today, you'll embark on a new life. If you dare to walk away, there will be consequences, though not physical ones. I'll tell your mom you've gone bonkers. Considering how concerned Victoria is for you, you'll find yourself in a hospital within moments. And afterwards, they'll ship you off to a loony house. So ponder what's in your best interest." From that fateful day forward, Hudson's existence descended into a veritable inferno. At the ungodly hour of 6 a.m., Thomas would rouse him from slumber, compelling him to engage in rigorous exercises, run like a madman, and endure icy showers. Any semblance of disobedience would result in Hudson enduring excruciating retribution, though devoid of any physical marks. Desperate to share his plight, Hudson attempted to confide in his mother during her visits, only to have Thomas swiftly insinuate that Hudson's faculties were clouded by alcohol, causing him to succumb to vivid hallucinations. The absence of visible scars and Hudson's improving appearance convinced Victoria that Thomas's words rang true. Tenderly caressing Hudson's head, planting a loving kiss on his brow, she beamed gratefully at Thomas. A month later, both young men found themselves toiling away in Lincoln's team. And as fate would have it, 6 months later, Victoria stepped into her humble abode and stood awestruck. The dwelling glistened with the fruits of fresh renovations, adorned with new furnishings and gleaming plumbing fixtures. Hudson and Thomas' weddings were scheduled for the same day. Victoria, filled with happiness and vitality, affectionately gazed upon her sons, her very own Hudson and the one who had become her own, Thomas. 2 years had elapsed since his arrival, and she expressed daily gratitude to God for sending Thomas, a savior to her son. "So, brother, how about raising a toast to ourselves and our wives?" Thomas suggested, a mischievous glint in his eyes as he glanced at Hudson. "You don't drink to your family, you take care of them." Hudson responded, raising his glass of juice. "I appreciate your attention, folks. Feel free to subscribe to the channel. I'd be grateful for a thumbs up on the video. Catch you all again soon."